Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Selling Smart Live, where you get the opportunity to come into the chat and come at James and I with any questions that you've got tied to digital sales, social selling. There's something that you're just really curious about and you want to put it in. We'll use our discretion to decide if we want to answer any personal questions. But James, do you want to give anybody who doesn't know you a quick hello, introduction? I'll do the same, and then we'll get started with the conversation about like one of our most common questions as we wait for more to come into the chat.
Sounds good. So everyone, I'm James Roloff. I'm his husband, partner here at Roloff Consulting. So I've been in the digital space for a long time. Initially starting to do website development and messing around with online servers back in the early 2000s. And then for the last 8 or 9 years, I've been running the sales team at a website design company. And after that business was sold, I went off and now I'm just doing digital sales consulting and working with sales teams to help them basically digitally transform their sales process.
Great. So for those that don't know me, I am James's wife, the other co-founder of Roloff Consulting. Hopefully the sound is better now. I heard I sounded a bit like a robot there for a minute. So hopefully that is changed here as we work through the dynamics of a live stream. But I have about a decade worth of enterprise sales experience. And for most of you that are joining in, you probably know me well for acting a fool on the internet to share my beliefs on transformation and change management. And now talking a little bit more about how you can take tried and true digital sales tactics into your sales process. So, James, I want to get started, as I said, with a question that we get very frequently before we start getting more into the chat. And that is, what's the difference between digital sales and traditional sales tactics? And why is it something people need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think that's a really very common question we get, and it's legitimate. So I think the main kind of thing to think about here is that digital sales is basically just saying it is sales that is done through digital channels. So using technology, whether it's hardware, software, typically software, as a way of doing sales. And I think where it's kind of confusing is like, if someone is doing sales today, you can call it modern selling, right? Modern sales tactics. Something like digital sales would fall under that umbrella. So it's one of those things where it's not like a revolutionary idea. It's more just saying like we're using software and technology to do sales better. And the best kind of analogy I can think about is digital marketing, right? So there's digital marketing and then there's marketing. So that's kind of the realm of things that I came from in the past. And marketing includes things like direct mail and potentially doing like TV commercials and all this other stuff. Where digital marketing focuses more on things like website marketing, email marketing, SEO. So I kind of see digital sales as the different sales strategies and sales tactics that in particular leverage software and computer hardware to be more effective with your selling strategy.
So I said it, and I'm going to try and stay as active in the chat as I can to make this feel like a live event. But as always, we'd love to get questions from you about ideas around digital sales, specific questions if you have a problem that you're looking to solve. So James, one of the things that I also hear a lot about, so thank you for the definition of kind of like what is digital sales. But another thing that, and I think we can go back and forth on this a little bit until we start getting some more questions in the comments. But why do you think that digital sales and specifically social selling does such a great job of developing trust and authority with your customers?
Yeah, so I was having a conversation with someone this other day, just how one of the most important things a salesperson can do is build their professional network. You look at any organization, the top sales reps always have an awesome network. And that's who they leverage for referrals. That's who they leverage to get in the door for new businesses. That's how they expand their business within a larger enterprise. So your network is your biggest asset as a salesperson. So I think the big thing to understand is that when it comes to doing business online, a lot of business is still done in person at trade shows or in person in local geographic areas. But when it comes to doing business online, social media is the best way to build that personal network through digital channels. It's not simply just like sending out a connection request to someone on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, that's part of my network now." Like that person's not really part of your network at that point. But it's more trying to actually build a relationship with that person, engaging with their content, and having them engage with your content, and ideally trying to set up a time to actually meet with that person if they're local, obviously in person. But if not, which is the case nowadays with a lot of relationships, meeting them online, doing a Zoom call with them. I had 2 Zoom calls yesterday with different people that I met through LinkedIn, and I consider them, good friends in my network online and in business. And no doubt we're going to have some good business relationships come out of that too. So, a long-winded answer to basically say that social media is essentially your online networking platform now. It's like going to your chamber of commerce event, but except with 100 people there in some weird old bar. It is now like online with everyone accessible to it. It's a really great way to basically build that network.
Don't knock in person. Sometimes they're not weird old bars. Sometimes they're modern bars.
Sure.
um,
No, I mean, yeah, I love going to in-person events still. We go to at least one or two every single month, so I'm not knocking that by any means.
Well, and I would say to add on to that, when you take a look at building trust, and I have this conversation pretty routinely with people, showing up on social media, and anybody that's in the chat, like certainly chime in if this is your feeling. It's not easy. It's not easy to show up every single day and offer value. And your customers and your prospects are going to notice if you are consistently coming on and talking about their problems. They're going to consistently recognize if you're offering solutions that help them think about things differently. And they're just going to notice that you know enough about your industry to show up consistently. And there's also, when we take a look at just like the entire paradigm of digital sales, you have to build trust completely differently today than you did 10 years ago. When I first started in sales, it was imperative that our first meeting was in person so that we could start to build trust and start to get people to know who we were and start to build that relationship. I don't remember the last time that I had an introductory call with somebody as like our very first interaction in a sales process that was in person. Now, I have gone to events and met people, but that way of building trust and showing who you are and that you're a dependable resource for someone is completely different than it was before. And so consistency and small indications that you are a trustworthy and a valuable partner for somebody add up pretty extensively across your entire sales process. So again, if they log on and they see your face and you're a dependable resource talking about your industry day in and day out, that automatically gives your prospects a sense that you know what you're talking about and that you're going to be there when they need you if you do move forward with a partnership.
Yeah, I was gonna say, kind of add on that quick too. I think there's kind of layers to that, right? So and we kind of do this in our hierarchy when it comes to like how we're doing social selling. But like at a base level, you're just making connections and building your network and trying to meet new people. And then again, taking the conversation synchronous through a Zoom meeting or whatever kind of thing too. But like the higher up level of social selling and digital sales is that thought leadership where you are continually posting new content and bringing new ideas to your audience, which builds that trust too. They're both really important parts of social selling, but they're kind of two separate strategies, or at least like the thought leadership is like a more advanced part of that strategy, I should say.
So, James, you just touched on something. You kind of mentioned our social selling hierarchy, but didn't go into too much detail for that. So, for anybody that's not familiar, do you want to dive into that idea a little bit?
Yeah, so I could probably find the blog post here that I did for Sell Social, but essentially, when it comes to social selling, which is kind of a subset of digital sales, we have a hierarchy we use when it comes to training clients and teaching people how to social sell. So just like Haslow's hierarchy of needs in the world of psychology, there's kind of a path-dependent approach you can take to building out your social selling strategy. Kind of starting with some foundational stuff, like making sure your profile is optimized and you understand what your value proposition is for your product or service. Then moving on, connecting, build out your network. then it's engaging, so commenting and interacting with people, and then sharing, which is actually creating posts, creating original content and publishing out to your network. And the very top of that hierarchy is thought leadership, actually leading discussions online to an audience. So very, very quick synopsis of it. I have a blog post that I can post in the comments later that kind of outlines it in more detail. But it's also the basis that we use for our social selling bootcamp that we're doing. So October 2nd is the start date for it. So you can check that out on our website too. But essentially, it's a cohort-based course where we're actually going to walk through week by week and start implementing on that hierarchy too. So not meant to be an advertisement, but it just came up obviously in the process.
I'm glad to make you try and say cohort-based course over and over again to see how many times it takes you to mess that one up. And I specifically asked you because I have trouble with saying sell with social without pulling all of my words together. It's like Sally down by the seashore for me in terms of tongue twister nature. Another reminder to everybody to throw your comments or questions into the comments if you've got something specific that you'd like us to talk through. And we've also got some comments coming in on YouTube as well. So I'll continue to throw those into the conversation, but especially you folks on LinkedIn, I see you there. So ask your questions, don't be shy. So James, a lot of times, and I can give my viewpoint on this as well, but I know we even just had a conversation with one of our customers about this yesterday of different types of video that can be effective in a social selling strategy. So do you want to talk through like your viewpoint on how to get started with video? Because I know it's a little bit different than being as boisterous as I always am. So give your thoughts on kind of like what that looks like from a standard seller's perspective.
Yeah, so I think video. Again, you're better and more advanced in the world of video than I am. But when it comes to video for sales reps and or business leaders, where you're a business executive or marketing or sales, something that's kind of outward facing video on social media. I think there's this misconception that you need to do something really fancy and really professional to post it on social media. And there is a very, very good and great place for professional videography, especially if you're doing like culture videos or videos about a product, or you're doing something like basically about us kind of video kind of thing. There's tons of good use cases for professional video done by a professional. But when it comes to social context, it really is more about just talking to your audience directly and having it be more of a casual conversation. And that's how I use video. I simply using my camera phone, talking and explaining a topic, how-tos, explainer videos, talking about a case study of something that happened with you. Those are all great examples of the kind of video you can use as a simple business professional posting to social media. I think the key frame of mind to get into there is really that it is just like you walking up and having a casual conversation with somebody you see at a networking event, or a conversation maybe you're having with a prospect or a customer. So I guess one of my favorite types of content is kind of like an FAQ style video, where basically you've heard the same question from the last 20 prospects you talked to. So why not just create a quick video of you talking about it, publishing it, and that video will probably be seen by hundreds, if not thousands of people in your network. And now that network knows that you know how to answer that common question that they get on a regular, or sorry, that they're thinking in their head on a regular basis. So that opens that door up for further conversations with you, which means more leads and sales and money. And next thing you know, you're living the high life. But that's to completely go off there. Moral story is, yeah, I like casual social selling and casual video, and just act like you're talking to someone one-on-one.
So we do have a question that came in from Alex asking about advice on kind of aligning marketing departments and sales departments. And James and I actually did a full presentation on this a couple of months ago for the American Marketing Association, because you're right, there is a lot of blending between those different dynamics between the departments, roles and responsibilities. But I think the number one thing that we talked about, and James, feel free to chime in on this as well, is the idea that like both sales and marketing are driven and responsible for generating revenue. And one of the most effective ways of getting both a sales and marketing team aligned, and truthfully, and this is coming from two salespeople that know this acutely, a big way to get these teams aligned is to have marketing start speaking the language of revenue as opposed to metrics that come from social engagement or other platforms like, your website or those kind of vanity metrics, for lack of a better term. And when you get both of your teams focused on discussing revenue and you get your marketing team focused on driving revenue as opposed to driving those other metrics, you're suddenly going to start speaking the same language, and it's going to feel a lot more collaborative as you're working through the dynamics of being able to get your company and your brand out there at a different level. Selfishly, as a salesperson, when you look at those lines being blurred, it is to every single salesperson, or really any professional, in my opinion. It goes well beyond sales. But it is to their best interest to have a personal brand and build their own individual reputation as an expert within that field. And so there is a huge value that comes from sharing content that your marketing department is creating. And there should be collaboration on what that content is and how it's being distributed. But I also think it's on the salesperson's shoulders, just the same way it would be if they were in a meeting with a prospect, to be able to tap into questions and concerns that their prospects have and really start creating their own content and their own voice in this space. And again, that can be leveraging some of the things that your marketing department is doing. But I think that there's a specific role in their own personal brand that goes side by side with the company brand. James, I know you've got some very specific thoughts on this as well.
Yeah. I'll say this not to knock what you're just saying, but I hate the term personal brand, but that is the truth of what it is. When I think of personal brand, I always think of like pyramid scheme style, you rah rah style things. But the reality is to Alex's question directly, I see marketing as the team that puts out company content. So company branded content that is the company publishing things. So a company blog, a company webinar, a company white paper, their website presence. And that's really important because you have to have a strong brand identity for someone to buy from you. They do want to trust the product or the service they're buying. So that's kind of one bucket. Then you as a sales rep should have your own brand and your own content, and you want to be seen as a trusted expert that knows what they're talking about in their industry, and people can trust you to guide them down to find the right solution and solve their problem for them. So the content that a person puts out as a sales rep is really more of them just trying to teach people, teach their audience, and make connections and build that network so that they're seen as experts, not as a company, not as a brand in that sense, but more as a person, an individual. Which again, take out the digital side of this, go back, well, longer now, 20 years ago, right? Maybe even 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there were ways for you as an individual sales rep to be seen as trusted and have a personal brand simply by going to networking events and going to trade shows and saying helpful things and teaching people in person. But now you're just doing that online instead. So to Alex's question directly, I think it more of the company does a company brand and you as a person do your own personal brand, but really it's more of just putting yourself out there as an expert that knows what you're talking about, and people can trust you to find the solution for their problem.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I got a little excited and clicked too early, but Curtis just came into the chat with a really great suggestion, and also kind of sharing anecdotally the response that his team has gotten. So any incoming leads that they gets a video message and response, and that they've gotten really good interaction and conversion off of that personal touch. And I think that that's such a great idea and opens up another topic of conversation, specifically in how do you use digital sales tactics outside of just social selling. And so this was something that I actually started doing as well at the beginning of COVID. And mostly because honestly, I hit the point where I was trying everything I could to get conversations started in that first month because everything really came to a halt. And I started using tools I know there's Vidyard and Loom and all of these other different platforms that you can leverage to create videos and send them out via email. And I actually think that this is a really, really great way to do email prospecting. and sets you apart drastically from other people, because you can't use the exact verbatim script that you would when you're cold calling. If you're creating a custom video for somebody, you have to put just not much, but slightly more effort into your outreach if you're doing it via video as opposed to a cold call or copying and pasting an email template. But beyond just like having higher conversions, you also get to a no a lot quicker if you're taking that extra step and putting forward that effort, because the person on the receiving end is at least going to say, okay, well, you took the time to do that. I'm going to let you know right now is not the right time. And you get more feedback and information, even if it's a no, through that process of using video as a part of your outreach strategy. And so I think that that's something that is grossly underused. And actually, James, you made a post the other day about, wasn't it? It was a meme. So let's like kind of transition from video to other ways to get people away from just, like the following up email and those types of things, like other creative ways to use digital tools to get people to engage with you during the buying process.
Yeah, I think the big thing to think about is understanding where your prospect is in their buyer's journey, right? And this is like super cliche marketing 101 stuff, but understanding the buyer's journey is really important. And I think sales reps in general don't think of it correctly. So break it down real quick. Buyer's journey is essentially the process that your buyer moves through in the path to purchase from you. So no one just wakes up one day ready to buy your product or service, right? And even if the product, like, I mean, think about food, right? We buy food every single day or we eat every single day, but it's not something you always have a need for. So there's a path people go through on the way to buy from you, starting with problem awareness. So that they become aware they have a problem that needs to be fixed. Then once they become aware they have a problem, then they move down to solution research, which is actually looking for solutions for that problem. That's where they start doing things like trying to figure out like what even could possibly even solve this problem that I found out I have. Then they move down to decision making. So once they've identified potential solutions, then it's time to make a decision. And I think this is where the sales reps like to play, right? This is where they think that like they always assume everyone's like thinking about making a decision. But the reality is most of your audience, most of your prospects or potential market, I should say, are up in that like they're not even aware they have a problem yet, or they're just finding out they have a problem and maybe starting to look for solutions, right? So not I'll digress there. As a decision making, that's where they actually look and try and pick which solution they want to move forward with. So that's when they compare you to your competitors, spec out price, look who's the most trustworthy, read reviews, all of that kind of stuff. And that's where like the proposal stages and the final negotiations happen. And then after they purchase, you have post purchase. So kind of like how are they interacting with you going forward after they've made that purchase? So customer support, ongoing add-ons, upsells, referrals, things like that. So that's the buyer's journey. But it's important to kind of understand from a sales perspective, how can you plug in and kind of provide value at each stage of that buyer's journey? And how can you provide content? So whether it's inviting people to go to a webinar, I mean, like today we're here doing a LinkedIn Live. So depending on where you're at in your stage of trying to understand digital sales, obviously you're learning about some things today, talking to me and Emma here. But it could be a webinar, it can be a blog post, it can be a resource, it can be a one-on-one consultation just to meet with them and understand their business. I know Alex, for instance, does cybersecurity insurance, so that's a huge thing. Is that I know that his team has like experts in cybersecurity and cybersecurity insurance. So there's kind of that like, oh crap, we need to be compliant in cybersecurity. To hey, let's bring in your expert and talk with you. We might not be ready to buy yet, but the next conversation is looking for solutions and decision making too. So I know it's kind of a long rambled answer that probably wasn't directly answering the question, but it's important to kind of think in that buyer's journey framework as a sales rep, and then plug in relevant responses and follow-ups and content that can provide value each stage.
Um, One thing I do want to put in here real quickly, and then we'll get to the two questions that we just got, was I put into the chat that this conversation reminded me of a chat that Curtis and I had, and he had shared an anecdote with me that a salesperson hired a Cameo. If you're not familiar with that, it's like B to F level celebrities who are hired to make specific videos for you. And so a salesperson had used a Cameo to get back into contact with them. And I just thought that that was so funny. It really shows a lot of personality on behalf of the salesperson. And it was incredibly personalized because of that. Sri, you mentioned this idea that some companies will block videos. If you're in an industry now, obviously I know insurance pretty acutely. There are some companies that will block videos. You can also do things like include a link. Now, some companies will also block links. I would say play around with specific outreach and seeing what resonates with your audience and where you get the highest open rates. But you could do like unlisted YouTube videos that they're the only ones that get access to. Or there are, again, some of those platforms like Loom and stuff like that. You can have specific URLs that you'll send them to. So you're not embedding the video itself into the email. And you may see a better response with that as opposed to putting the video directly in the email itself. But it is going to be one of those things that you kind of have to play around with because some of them too might have the domain of Loom blacklisted, but not Vidyard. And I've played around with that and gotten different responses from those different platforms and what gets pulled by a spam filter and what doesn't. More often than not, what I see within the insurance industry is that links are allowed, but they're going to have their spam filter open it and click every link to make sure that it's not bad before they send it on. So I think you'd probably be better served by including the link as opposed to the actual video itself. And then Linda asked, is it, like using avatars and videos professional? I think it all comes down to like what the vibe of the video is. And I am a big proponent, again, with my content and how I interact with my customers, in believing that a lot of what we thought professional was is starting to fade away, and that it's a lot more of being who you are. And if that's something that feels right for you and your team to do, Linda, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it, as long as you're not like having an avatar come and swear at people and say offensive things. I think you're probably okay in the land of professionalism as it stands today. James, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Generally speaking, avatars weird me the hell out. This is like I mean, I just think of like Mark Zuckerberg's like metaverse future, of like those weird meetings where everyone's weird cartoon characters and stuff. And like, I genuinely see myself as a pretty like technology forward guy in a lot of ways. But I like you said, there's a time and place for them, and it's like a vibe thing more than anything else. But going back to like Curtis's original point about the follow-up with video, I think ultimately it comes down to human psychology. And if you see someone's face talking to you, that is a much more powerful way to build that trust. It's an innate part of who we are as fancy monkeys, that like if we see someone talking to us, we see their face, and they're saying our name and talking about our problems, that's going to innately start to build trust in us. Whereas I'm afraid that if you use things like avatars or obscure yourself too much, it kind of almost dehumanizes you in that process, and it probably isn't as beneficial as a straight up video. So that'd be my like more pseudoscientific response than simply that.
So avatars don't weird me out, but what do really weird me out are the videos, like the AI generated videos where they're not quite really humans talking, because that gets to me. And so we are at time for our session today. Please tell us, for those of you that joined, if you would like these conversations to continue, if you'd like to see more of them, if you'd like us to do more specific focused topics as opposed to kind of these ask us anything scenarios. Throw your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to continue to do these lives for people and kind of make sure that we're targeting them where you feel like there's the biggest need. And as always, feel free to go ahead and send us direct messages if you'd like as well. But thank you everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all soon.
Yeah, well, parting notes here quick too. If you go to our website, I'll post a link to that blog post too about the social selling hierarchy. I'll post that in the comments here on LinkedIn afterwards. And then, like I said, we do have a boot camp coming up October 2nd. So if you're interested in social selling specifically, you can check that out on our website too. So just want to plug that before we leave too.
Great.
All right,
Thanks,
good.
James. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.